He sat next to me on the plane. What happened at 30,000 feet changed my life. I wasn't supposed to be on that flight. A last-minute change, a missed connection, and a rebooked seat landed me in 14A, exhausted and annoyed, just wanting to close my eyes and forget the world for a few hours. I had no idea that the man who'd sit in 14B was going to shift something in me I didn't even know needed shifting. He looked like someone out of a movie, calm, confident, with that kind of presence that made everything around him feel slower. He smiled as he sat down, said hello like we already knew each other. I answered with a polite nod, thinking that would be the end of it. But at 30,000 feet, the air got thinner, the walls got closer, and what started as casual conversation turned into something I couldn't name. A look, a touch, a moment that changed everything I thought I knew about myself. Before we take off, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. That's how we keep bringing you unforgettable stories that might just make you feel everything all over again. I almost missed the flight. Honestly, I was hoping I would. It had already been a terrible day. Delayed meetings, lost luggage, and a phone full of unread messages from people I wasn't ready to face. My original flight out of LAX had been canceled, and after arguing with a gate agent who clearly hated his life more than I hated mine, I ended up on a red-eye to New York with a middle seat and a short temper. 14A window. At least that was something. I slumped into the seat, hoodie up, headphones in, trying to disappear before anyone else got on board. I didn't even look up when someone slid into the seat beside me, just caught the scent of something expensive, clean, warm, and totally out of place in coach. "Hey," he said casually, like he didn't notice how wrecked I looked. I didn't answer. I wasn't in the mood. He didn't press. Just settled in, fastened his seatbelt, and pulled out a book. 5 minutes into taxiing, I cracked one eye open. He was tall, taller than the seat could handle. Dark hair, sleeves rolled to the elbows, a thin gold bracelet on his wrist that glinted every time he turned a page. His jaw was covered in soft stubble, like he hadn't shaved in a day, and when he reached to adjust the air nozzle, I caught a glimpse of a tattoo just beneath his shirt sleeve. Something small and black. I couldn't see what it was. I looked away, and then, as if he felt it, he turned to me. "Long day?" he asked. His voice was deep, easy, and there was something about the way he asked it, not nosy, just open. I pulled one headphone out. "Something like that." He smiled slightly. "Same. My day ended with me accidentally insulting a client's wife. Pretty sure that contract's dead." I snorted before I could stop myself. He turned a little toward me. "There it is, a real sound. I knew you had one. Don't get used to it," I said, but not unkindly. We didn't speak for a while after that. The plane took off. Lights dimmed. The world fell away. I leaned against the window, pretending to sleep, but I couldn't stop thinking about him. There was something magnetic about him, something in the way he carried silence without making it awkward. I didn't know his name, didn't know where he was going or what he did, but I felt safer near him than I had around anyone in weeks. About an hour into the flight, I felt a nudge. "You hungry?" he asked, holding out half of his protein bar. "They're not serving food for another hour." I hesitated, then took it. "Thanks. I'm Elias, by the way." I looked at him. "Daniel." He offered a hand. I shook it. His palm was warm. We talked after that, not constantly, just enough. He told me he worked in architecture, consulting for hotels, traveled all the time, lived mostly out of suitcases. I told him I worked in marketing and didn't travel much, but when I did, I usually regretted it. We laughed quietly about terrible airline food, about exes, about how the guy in front of us reclined his seat before takeoff and was still somehow snoring like a chainsaw. It felt easy, which was dangerous, because easy made me lower my guard. At one point, I shifted in my seat and my leg brushed his. I went to move, but he didn't. He just let it rest there, warm, close. Neither of us said anything. I don't know if it meant something to him, but it meant something to me. That someone like him, someone that calm, that put together, didn't flinch when I didn't pull away. Eventually, the cabin went quiet. Most of the passengers slept. The lights dimmed even further. Elias leaned toward me just slightly, his voice a whisper now. "Are you okay?" It caught me off guard. "What?" "You just looked like you were somewhere else for a second." I paused. I was. "Good place or bad?" "Not sure yet." He nodded slowly, his gaze soft. "Well, if you need company on the way back, I'm not sleeping either." And then he smiled, small, private, and turned his face toward the window. I stared at the side of his face, heart beating a little faster than it should. And that's when I saw it, the edge of a small scar above his eyebrow. I knew that scar. I'd seen it once before, 17 years ago. That scar shouldn't have meant anything. Plenty of people have scars, and most of them go unnoticed. But this one, a thin line just above his right eyebrow, angled slightly like a comma, it wasn't just familiar, it was unforgettable. Because I'd seen it 17 years ago. In a summer camp cabin, when the boy across from me slammed into a door frame during a midnight prank gone wrong. I remembered the blood, the panic, the way we both laughed too hard to care. I remembered holding a flashlight while the counselor cleaned it with rubbing alcohol. I remembered his name. Eli. Back then, he was all knees and sarcasm. Trouble in every direction. And when we shared our last night together in that creaky wooden bunk bed, he'd whispered to me, "Don't forget me, even if I forget myself." I hadn't, but I'd told myself he was a one-time blur in a messy teenage memory. Nothing more. Someone I built up in my head because I was too afraid to admit how I really felt back then. I turned to look at him again. Elias. Was it even possible? Same smile, same voice, but deeper, rougher. The boy had become a man, and yet, I saw him now, in flashes. He turned and caught me staring. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I lied. "Sorry, I thought I recognized your scar." He raised an eyebrow, amused. "This old thing? Had it since I was 15. Stupid camp story." My heart skipped. "Camp Blackwood?" I asked carefully. He froze, then blinked. "Wait, how do you—" I felt my pulse in my ears. "I was there," I said. "That summer, 2007. You ran into a door trying to scare the girls in cabin 3. You were laughing so hard you almost passed out." He stared at me. And then, he said it. "Danny?" Everything inside me went still. No one had called me that in nearly 2 decades. "Holy shit," he breathed, sitting back like he'd just been punched. "I can't believe this." Neither could I. He looked at me again, searching every part of my face. "You changed. A lot." I laughed nervously. "So did you." He shook his head, smiling in disbelief. "I mean, out of all the flights." "Out of all the seats," I added. Silence settled between us again. But this time it wasn't empty. It was electric. "I thought you were a dream for years," I admitted. "I told myself I made you up." "You didn't," he said. "I thought about you too, more than I should have." Then why didn't you try to find me? He looked down at his hands. Because back then, I didn't know how to be brave. That stung, not in a bitter way, in a painfully familiar one. I didn't either, I said quietly. I still don't, most days. He looked back up at me, eyes softer now. You're here, aren't you? I nodded. For the rest of the flight, we didn't talk much. But we didn't need to. There was a silent conversation happening between glances, between accidental touches of our elbows, between every breath we didn't know we were holding. When the plane landed, the spell broke a little. Lights came on, voices buzzed, bags thumped overhead, but he didn't move. What now? I asked him. He gave me a small smile. That depends. How long are you in New York? 3 days, I said. Business trip. He stood and reached for his bag. I've got a hotel downtown, he said, and I've got time. I stared at him, unsure of what he meant. Then he leaned in, just enough to send a chill down my spine, and said, Meet me for dinner tonight. My throat went dry. Is that a question or a dare? I asked. Both, he replied. And then he walked off the plane. I stood frozen, unsure if I could trust what just happened. But just before he disappeared into the crowd at the terminal gate, he turned back and winked. I spent the entire day thinking I'd imagined it. The look in his eyes, the way he said my name, the dinner invitation. It all felt surreal, like some twisted dream pulled from the drawer where I kept every memory of that summer we never talked about. And now, here I was, hours later, standing in front of a restaurant I never would have chosen myself. It was elegant, softly lit, the kind of place where people made real decisions. Not just about wine, but about their lives. I almost turned around. But then I saw him inside, already sitting by the window, wearing a dark shirt that hugged his frame too well, sipping from a glass like he belonged here. Like he hadn't just crashed into my carefully reconstructed emotional stability at 30,000 feet. He looked up and smiled. And just like that, I was 15 again. Heart racing, legs unsure, thoughts everywhere but where they should be. I walked in. He stood, greeted me with a hug that lasted just a second too long. Or maybe I imagined that, too. Didn't think you'd actually show, he said, sitting back down. Neither did I confessed. He chuckled. That makes 2 of us. Dinner was easy, too easy. We talked about work, about family, about how strange it was that we'd gone nearly 2 decades without hearing each other's voice. He told me about his years abroad, the cities he'd lived in, the relationships that didn't last. I listened. I asked questions. I tried not to stare at his hands. Halfway through the meal, he paused. You know, he said, for years, I thought I imagined you. My stomach tightened. What do you mean? That night at camp, I was convinced it was a dream I made up to survive everything I wasn't ready to face. I looked down at my plate. It wasn't. I know that now, he said. But back then, I couldn't handle it. The way you looked at me, the way I felt when you did. I ran. You disappeared. He nodded. I did. Do you regret it? He didn't answer right away. Then, I regret not being brave. I regret not kissing you one more time before I left. I regret not writing you when I thought about it 1,000 times. My throat tightened. I wrote you, I said. He looked surprised. I never sent it, I added quickly. But I wrote it, over and over, every year on your birthday. He didn't speak, just stared at me with something between guilt and awe in his eyes. Then he reached across the table and touched my hand. It was light, barely there, but it burned. What now? I whispered. I don't know, he said. but I don't want to pretend I didn't find you again. I looked at his fingers on mine. What if I've built you up too much in my head? He smiled gently. What if you haven't built me up enough? I didn't answer. I couldn't. After dinner, we walked out into the cold night air. The streets buzzed with yellow cabs and hurried footsteps. It should have felt like a normal city night, but nothing about it felt ordinary. We walked in silence. When we reached the corner, he stopped. I'm staying 3 blocks from here, he said. I nodded. I wasn't planning to say this, he continued, voice low, but I'd like you to come with me. My heart stuttered. Not for anything, he added quickly. Just to keep talking. Maybe to not lose this so fast. I hesitated. Everything inside me screamed to go, to keep feeling this thing that felt like it had waited 17 years to breathe. But a thought stabbed through me. What happens if I go and it's nothing? What if the fantasy breaks? What if I fall again, and this time there's no recovery? I looked up at him, and then I said, I can't, I said. It came out faster than I expected. Too fast. Like a reflex, not a decision. Elias blinked, his expression unreadable, frozen for a moment like he hadn't heard me. I added, trying to find the words. I don't know what this is yet, and if I follow you into that hotel, even just to talk, I know I'll want more. His eyes softened. Is that a bad thing? No, I said. It's the worst kind of good. He looked down, exhaled through his nose, then glanced back up with something that felt like sadness, but also understanding. I didn't mean to push, he said. I just wanted more time. 17 years wasn't long enough? I tried to joke, but it didn't land. He smiled anyway. You've changed, but you're still you. I don't know who I am when I'm with you, I admitted, stepping back slightly. And that scares the hell out of me. He nodded. It scares me too. A cab pulled up just behind us, the headlights catching his face in the cold air. He looked so real, so now, not a memory, not a dream. And somehow, that made it harder. I should go, he said quietly. I know. I meant it, he added. Everything I said. About the camp. About you. I know. He looked at me one more time, long, like he was memorizing something, and then got into the cab. The door closed, the lights faded, and he was gone. I stood there until the street emptied, until the buzz of the city dimmed enough to hear my own heartbeat again. I told myself I did the right thing, that guarding my heart was maturity, not fear, that walking away wasn't weakness, it was self-preservation. But when I got back to the hotel and sat alone in the dark, I couldn't stop shaking. Not from the cold, from the weight of what could have been. I slept restlessly that night. Woke up too early, stared at my phone like it owed me an answer, but there was no message, no missed call, no sign he'd waited, and that hurt more than I thought it would. Around noon, I went for a walk, anything to stop thinking. I wandered through blocks I didn't know, letting the city swallow me, and just when I thought I might finally calm down, I turned a corner, and there he was, Elias, sitting on a bench in a quiet park, head down, lost in whatever storm he was fighting alone. My feet moved before my brain caught up. He looked up the moment I reached him. You found me, he said. I wasn't looking, I lied. He gave a tired smile. You always were a bad liar. I sat beside him. Silence settled like fog. I wanted to be braver, I finally said. Last night, I wanted to go with you, but part of me, still remembers what it felt like to want someone who didn't know how to want me back. He nodded slowly. You think that's me now? I don't know, I said honestly. He stared at his hands, then turned to me, voice low. I never stopped thinking about you, Daniel. I don't say that to make this harder. I say it because I don't want to keep lying to myself, or to you. My chest ached. And I'm not asking you to run away with me. I'm asking you to meet me where we are. Now. Two men with history, maybe too much baggage, and a scar or two in the same place. I laughed, softly, painfully. We really met again on a plane. He smiled. Maybe that's how fate works now. Through chaos. I looked at him, my hand inches from his on the bench, and then I asked, what happens if I reach for you now? He didn't answer. He just took my hand. But just then, my phone buzzed again, and this time it was my mom. Call me ASAP. It's about Dad. I called my mom with Elias still holding my hand. I didn't want to let go, but my past and present were colliding again, violently. My dad had collapsed at home. Heart issues. He was stable, but scared. I booked the next flight out. Elias came with me to the airport. We didn't say much. The silence was filled with everything we hadn't figured out yet. At the gate, I finally turned to him. I don't want this to be another goodbye. He held my face in his hands, gently. It won't be. Not this time. He kissed my forehead, and for the first time, I didn't flinch at being seen. I let him kiss me in public, because this time, I wasn't hiding anymore. 3 weeks passed. My dad recovered, slowly. It made me think a lot about time, how much we waste, how much we pretend we have. Elias texted me every day, some messages long, some just, still thinking of you. When I finally came back to the city, he was waiting for me outside my hotel. No speech, no pressure, just open arms. I walked straight into them. I'm ready, I said. For what? He asked. For whatever this is. With you. He smiled like he'd been holding his breath for years. And in that moment, I knew. Sometimes the flight you almost miss is the one that finally takes you home. If this story moved you, ask yourself, is there someone you left behind who still lives in your thoughts? What would happen if you reached out? Maybe your story isn't over yet. Subscribe, like the video, and turn on notifications, because sometimes the most unexpected journeys bring us exactly where we belong.